Everything you know about Roman gladiators is a lie. That image of honored warriors in shining armor? A complete myth, crafted for movies. The reality was far darker. When you think of the Roman arena, this is the image that comes to mind. The gladiator, a symbol of strength, honor, and a desperate fight for survival. We see the polished armor, the disciplined stances, the roar of a respectful crowd appreciating the martial skill. We've been sold a story of the ultimate sport of the ancient world, a brutal but fair contest between trained warriors. But that image is a carefully constructed fantasy. A sanitized story we tell ourselves to keep the past at a comfortable distance. The truth is that the gladiator duels, as brutal as they were often the least inhumane event of the day. They were merely the main event after a long and stomach-turning series of opening acts. The Roman arena was a state-sponsored stage for horrors so calculated, so creative in their cruelty, they force us to question our very definition of civilization. The real question isn't just what they did in that arena, but why did an empire at the peak of its power feel the need to go so far? To understand the industrial scale of the bloodshed, you first have to understand the Roman machine. The arena was never just about entertainment. It was a powerful and sophisticated political tool. The famous phrase, panem et circenses, bread and circuses, is a radical oversimplification. It wasn't about keeping the masses happy and distracted with a free meal and a good show. It was about systematically demonstrating absolute, inescapable power. For an emperor whose rule was often precarious, the games were a recurring pageant of dominance, a way to remind every single citizen, from the senator to the slave, who was in control. The spectacles served a specific, brutal purpose. By capturing and slaughtering thousands of exotic animals from the farthest corners of the known world, rhinos and hippos from Africa, tigers from the Parthian frontier, crocodiles from the Nile, the emperor was showing the Roman people, in the most visceral way possible, that there was no part of the world that didn't bend to Roman will. The arena became a living, screaming map of their conquests, written in blood. The public executions that followed weren't just about administering justice. They were a terrifying promise, a graphic demonstration of what would happen to any individual or any nation that dared to defy the state's authority. The day at the games often began not with gladiators, but with the Venationes, the great animal hunts. But to call them hunts is a misnomer. These were massacres. During the inaugural games of the Colosseum alone, it's estimated that over 9,000 animals were killed. Decades later, to celebrate his conquest of Dacia, the Emperor Trajan had over 11,000 animals slaughtered in the arena. Try to imagine the logistics, the noise, the overwhelming stench of blood, guts, and terrified animals. It was an ecological disaster, staged as a national holiday, designed to awe the public with sheer wasteful destruction, and reinforce the idea that Rome could afford to literally throw away the natural treasures of the world for an afternoon's amusement. As the morning's blood was being washed from the sand, the midday executions began. And this is where the line was crossed from brutal sport into the realm of unimaginable sadism. The Romans had a specific form of execution called damnatio ad bestias, condemnation to the beasts. These victims were not warriors. They were prisoners of war, runaway slaves, Christians, and common criminals, whose final terrifying moments were choreographed as public entertainment. They were sent into the arena with no weapons, no armor, no chance. Their only role in the great drama of Rome was to die horribly, for the applause of a cheering crowd. But even that straightforward horror wasn't enough for the Roman elite. Obsessed with their own mythology and literature, they invented one of the most perverse forms of execution ever conceived. They would force condemned criminals to reenact famous myths with one critical difference: the deaths were horrifyingly real. A man might be dressed as the mythological hero Orpheus, who was said to have charmed wild animals with his beautiful music. He would be given a lyre and pushed into the center of the arena, only to be mauled to death by a specially starved bear. Another criminal, playing the part of Icarus who flew too close to the sun, might be launched from a catapult high into the air, only to crash to his death on the arena floor. This was high culture, fused with state-sanctioned murder. It was no longer about justice, it was about finding the most creative, ironic, and psychologically scarring way to kill a human being. And then there was the ultimate spectacle, a display of power so immense it remains difficult to comprehend. The Naumachia, or mock naval battle. Yes, they would flood the entire floor of the Colosseum, or a purpose-built basin, using complex aqueduct systems. They would then have thousands of prisoners of war, and condemned criminals fight to the death on real, scaled-down warships. During one such event, under the Emperor Claudius, 19,000 men were forced to fight. As they passed the Emperor's box before the battle, they reportedly shouted the famous haunting line, "Hail Emperor, those who are about to die salute you." It was a spectacle so vast, so expensive, and so deadly, it served as the ultimate statement of Roman power. We can reshape the earth and sacrifice an entire army for a single afternoon's entertainment. This highlights the brutal hierarchy. A trained gladiator was an expensive investment, a professional athlete with a chance to survive. But a prisoner of war or a criminal? They were simply raw material, a body to be disposed of in the most spectacular way imaginable. What does watching this, day after day, year after year, do to a person, to an entire society? It creates a profound and dangerous desensitization to violence and suffering. For a civilization built on constant, brutal warfare, this was a feature, not a bug. The arena taught Roman citizens that extreme violence was not only normal, but that it was a form of entertainment. It was a patriotic duty to enjoy the bloody destruction of the enemies of the state, both human and animal. The screams from the arena floor reinforced the social order. They were a constant, audible reminder to every single person in Rome of the absolute power of the emperor and the horrific consequences of rebellion. It was the sound of the empire flexing its muscles for the benefit of its citizens. The Roman arena was not just a venue for sport. It was an engine of political control, a demonstration of imperial might, and a theater of cruelty that catered to the darkest aspects of human nature. Before we judge the Romans as uniquely monstrous, we should take a hard look at our own world. We no longer gather in a stone Colosseum to watch these events unfold, but we are surrounded by screens that deliver a constant, endless stream of real and simulated violence, often consumed with the same passive, detached curiosity. The thrill of watching conflict from a safe distance has not vanished. The Romans built an arena of sand and stone to watch human beings be destroyed for entertainment. We've simply built a new, more personal one out of pixels and light. The technology has changed, but the fundamental question remains: has the audience, has our fundamental human nature, truly changed with it? The Colosseum now stands as a ruin, a tourist attraction. But the human impulse that once filled it with blood and screams is not a relic of the past. It is a mirror, and it is reflecting a part of ourselves we would rather not see.